The massive ship moved through space like a crystal mountain. Its hull sparkled with thousands of lights, each one a weapon that could destroy a city. The Eternal Dominion was 15 kilometers long and had never lost a battle. Today would be no different. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge, his tall, crystalline body reflecting the light from the screens around him. His species, the Zephyrians, had ruled this part of space for 300 years. They were tall, beautiful beings made of living crystal that could speak to each other with their minds. They believed they were perfect, and for 3 centuries no one had proven them wrong. "Admiral," his second officer said without speaking, the words flowing directly into Kethvar's mind. "The rebel ships are trying to escape to the asteroid field." Kethvar smiled, though his crystal face made it look more like light dancing across a diamond. "Let them run. They will only die tired." Below them, 4 different alien species fought together in a desperate battle. The Karathi brought their heavy ships with thick armor. The Veltar used fast attack craft that buzzed around like angry insects. The Threnodi had energy weapons that could melt steel. The Osaki used their natural ability to see the future to predict enemy moves. Together, they made the strongest rebel force ever assembled. It did not matter. The Zephyrians were still winning. "Begin the final assault," Kethvar commanded through his mind. All around him, his officers received the order instantly. On 100 ships, weapons charged with power that could bend space itself. The first wave of attacks hit the rebel ships like hammers hitting glass. The Karathi heavy cruiser Ironwill exploded in a ball of fire. 3 Veltar fighters simply vanished as space twisted around them. A Threnodi ship tried to return fire, but its energy beams curved away from the Zephyrian vessels. "Pulled off target by gravity weapons, sir." Another officer spoke in his mind. "The rebels are sending a message." "To whom?" Kethvar asked, though he already knew it was pointless. No one in this sector would dare help rebels fight the hegemony. "Long-range transmission, sir. Beyond our territory. They are sending it to something called the Terran Federation." Kethvar laughed, the sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Terrans? You mean those primitive creatures from the Outer Rim? The ones who still use chemical rockets and fight with metal bullets?" He shook his head. "Let them send their message. By the time any help could arrive, these rebels will be dust and their children will serve the hegemony." The battle continued around them. The rebels fought bravely, but bravery could not stop superior technology. The Zephyrians had weapons that could make time move slower, armor that existed in several dimensions at once, and perfect communication between all their ships. Every move the rebels made, the Zephyrians knew about instantly. Every plan the rebels formed, the Zephyrians countered before it could work. Commander Ythra, leader of the rebel fleet, watched her forces die around her. Her ship, a modified Karathi battleship called Last Hope, shook as another Zephyrian attack barely missed. Half her fleet was gone. The other half was dying. "Commander," her communication officer said, "we have sent the message to the Terrans, but even if they want to help, they are so far away." "I know," Ythra said sadly, "but someone has to know what happened here. Someone has to know we tried." On the Eternal Dominion, Kethvar watched the rebels' desperate last stand with something that might have been respect. They were brave, he would give them that. But bravery without power was just a way to die with style. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "their flagship is trying to ram the crystal spear." "Let them," Kethvar said. "It will save us ammunition." The Last Hope accelerated toward the Zephyrian cruiser, all weapons firing. For a moment, it looked like the rebel ship might actually reach its target. Then space around it began to stretch. The Zephyrian gravity weapons grabbed the ship and slowly tore it apart. Commander Ythra and her crew died still trying to fight. Rebellion terminated. Kethvar's second officer announced to the fleet, "All hostile ships destroyed. Sector pacified." Kethvar nodded and turned away from the battle. Outside the great windows of his ship, debris from 100 rebel vessels drifted in space. Some pieces were still burning. Others simply tumbled in the dark, carrying the dreams of 4 species that had wanted to be free. "Bring the surviving population centers online," he commanded. "They will need new leadership. Leadership that understands the benefits of joining our civilization." "What about the message they sent?" asked his intelligence officer. "Should we send ships to intercept any response?" Kethvar considered this for a moment. The Terrans were so far away that any ship they sent would take years to reach this sector. And what could they send? The hegemony's intelligence reports described humans as a young species that had barely left their home system. They had crude technology, no psychic abilities, and their ships were held together with what appeared to be metal welds and prayer. No, he decided. If the Terrans are foolish enough to come here, let them. It will teach the other species in this sector what happens to those who resist the hegemony. The sight of burning human ships will keep the peace for another century. The fleet began to move away from the battlefield. Behind them, the asteroid field where the rebels had made their last stand grew quiet. Only the dead remained, floating in the cold between the stars. But the message had been sent. Traveling faster than light, it raced across the galaxy toward a small blue planet where a young species was just learning to reach for the stars. The message carried coordinates, battle reports, and desperate pleas for help. It also carried something else. Detailed scans of Zephyrian technology and battle tactics, bought with the blood of every rebel who had died. On distant Earth, military computers would soon receive this information. They would analyze it, study it, and pass it to humans who specialized in solving impossible problems. The Zephyrians were perfect warriors with perfect technology and perfect coordination. That was about to become their weakness. Admiral Kethvar stood in his perfect ship, surrounded by his perfect officers, having won another perfect victory. He had no idea that somewhere in the dark between stars, a species that had never known perfection was already beginning to plan. Humans were not strong like the Karathi, or fast like the Veltar, or powerful like the Threnodi, or wise like the Osaki. But they were stubborn, and they were coming. The message arrived at Earth on a Tuesday morning. Admiral Sarah Chen was drinking her third cup of coffee when the communication officer knocked on her office door. She had been reading reports about the new battleship project, and the numbers were giving her a headache. "Ma'am," the young officer said, "we have received a priority transmission from outside our sector. The computers say it traveled for 6 months to get here." Sarah looked up from her papers. Messages from outside human space were rare. Most alien species ignored Earth, and Earth was usually happy to be ignored. "What does it say?" "You need to see this yourself, ma'am." In the communication center, Sarah watched the message play on the main screen. The translation software worked hard to convert alien languages into English, but the meaning was clear enough. 4 species had tried to fight for their freedom. They had lost. They were asking for help from anyone who would listen. The images made Sarah's coffee taste bitter. Entire planets under Zephyrian control, populations forced to work in crystal mines, children taken from their families to serve as slaves, ships burning in space while perfect crystal beings watched and did nothing. "How far away is this?" Sarah asked. "The Kepler sector is approximately 8 months away at maximum FTL speed," the communication officer replied. "But ma'am, we have never sent ships that far from Earth. We do not even have diplomatic contact with that region." Sarah studied the star charts. 8 months there, 8 months back. Any ship they sent would be gone for over a year, assuming it came back at all. The Zephyrians had just destroyed a combined fleet of 4 species. What could Earth possibly send that would make a difference? Then she remembered the ship that was being built in the orbital yards above Earth. The ship that everyone said was impossible. The ship that combined human engineering with alien technology in ways that made other species shake their heads in disbelief. "Get me Admiral Rodriguez," she said. Captain Marcus Rodriguez had been expecting this call. He stood in the engineering section of the TFS Indomitable, watching technicians make final adjustments to systems that should not work. The ship around him was a contradiction held together by human stubbornness and alien technology that other species had thrown away as too dangerous. "Admiral Chen wants to see you," his communication officer said. "She says it is urgent." Marcus nodded and took one last look around the engineering bay. The Indomitable was not beautiful like alien ships. It was a mix of human steel and salvaged alien parts, welded together with techniques that made alien engineers nervous. But it was strong, and it was fast, and most importantly, it was unpredictable. In Admiral Chen's office, Marcus watched the same message that had arrived from the Kepler sector. When it finished, he sat quietly for a moment. "They are asking for help," Sarah said, "but they are asking the wrong species. We are just humans. We have one ship that might be able to make the journey, and even then, we have to try," Marcus said simply. "Why? We do not know these species. This is not our fight. We could lose the Indomitable and her entire crew for nothing. Marcus stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth turned slowly in space, blue and peaceful and free. Because if we do not, who will? Because someone has to stand up when people are being hurt. Because that is what humans do. Sarah looked at the reports on her desk. The Indomitable was still experimental. Half her systems were untested. Her crew had trained together for only 6 months. The ship carried weapons that other species said were too dangerous to use, armor that existed partially outside normal space, and an artificial intelligence that made alien computers refuse to interact with it. The government will never approve this, she said. Then do not ask them, Marcus replied. Give me emergency orders. Deep Space Patrol. Exploration mission. By the time anyone realizes where we really went, we will be too far away to recall. Sarah thought about this. It would probably end her career. It might start a war with the Zephyrians. The Indomitable might be destroyed, and Earth would lose its most advanced ship and best crew. But she thought about the images in the message. Children crying for parents they would never see again. Entire species forced to bow down to crystal beings who thought they were perfect. How soon can you leave? She asked. Give me 24 hours to finish loading supplies, Marcus said. The crew is ready. The ship is ready. We have been ready for months. The next morning, the Indomitable undocked from Earth's orbital station. She was not as large as alien ships, only 800 meters long. She was not as pretty as alien ships, her hull covered with sensor arrays and weapon mounts that stuck out at odd angles. She did not move as smoothly as alien ships, her engines leaving a trail of particles that made space traffic control nervous. But she was fast, and she was tough, and she was crewed by humans who had volunteered for a mission they knew might be suicide. On the bridge, Captain Rodriguez watched Earth grow smaller behind them. His crew worked around him, preparing for the longest journey any human ship had ever attempted. In the communication center, they broadcast a simple message back to Earth. Emergency Deep Space Patrol initiated. Estimated return in 18 months. It was not exactly a lie. They were patrolling deep space. Very deep space. In his quarters, Marcus opened the sealed orders that Admiral Chen had given him. Inside was everything Earth knew about the Zephyrian hegemony, along with detailed analysis of the rebel fleet's final battle. The information painted a clear picture. The Zephyrians were militarily superior in every way. They had better weapons, better armor, better coordination, and 300 years of experience crushing anyone who opposed them. At the bottom of the file was a handwritten note from Admiral Chen. Come back alive. That is an order. Marcus smiled and closed the file. Around him, the Indomitable jumped to faster than light speed, carrying a crew of 300 humans toward a battle they could not win against an enemy they had never met. To save people they did not know. It was the most human thing they could possibly do. In the depths of space, the Indomitable raced toward the Kepler sector. Behind her, Earth continued its slow rotation, unaware that her children were flying toward a war that would change the galaxy forever. Ahead of her, crystal ships patrolled a conquered sector, their crews confident that no one would dare challenge the eternal dominion of the Zephyrian hegemony. Both sides were about to learn something new about the universe. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler sector, with all the grace of a brick falling from the sky. Sparks flew from several control panels. The lights flickered, and something in the engine room made a sound like an angry cat. This was normal for human ships. Status report, Captain Rodriguez called out as his crew worked to bring all systems online. FTL drive is cycling down normally, his engineer reported. Weapons are charged and ready. Defensive systems are, well, they are doing whatever it is they do. Marcus nodded. The Indomitable's defensive systems were based on alien technology that humans did not fully understand. The ship could phase partially out of normal space, making it harder to hit and harder to hurt. Other species had tried similar technology and given up because it was too unpredictable. Humans had decided that unpredictable was a feature, not a bug. Sir, the communication officer called out, we are being scanned. Multiple contacts approaching from the direction of that gas giant. On the main screen, 12 Zephyrian ships appeared. They moved in perfect formation, their crystal hulls gleaming like jewels against the stars. Each ship was twice the size of the Indomitable, and their weapons were already charging. Incoming transmission, the communication officer announced. The face that appeared on the screen was beautiful in the way that perfect crystals are beautiful. Admiral Kethvar looked at the human ship with something that might have been curiosity. He had never seen anything quite like it. "Unknown vessel," Kethvar said, his words translated by the ship's computer. "You have entered hegemony space without permission. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Eternal Dominion. Identify yourself and state your business." Captain Rodriguez stood up and straightened his uniform. It was not as impressive as Kethvar's crystal armor, but it was clean and it was human. "I am Captain Marcus Rodriguez of the Terran Federation ship Indomitable. We received a distress call." Kethvar's crystalline features showed surprise. "Terran, you are the primitives who received the rebels' message." He studied the human ship more carefully. "Your vessel appears to be held together with metal patches and desperation. Surely you do not intend to challenge the hegemony?" "We did not come here to challenge anyone," Marcus replied calmly. "We came here to see what all the fuss was about." Several of Kethvar's officers shared thoughts through their mental link. The human captain seemed remarkably calm for someone facing 12 superior ships. Perhaps humans were too primitive to understand the danger they were in. "Captain Rodriguez," Kethvar said with what he thought was kindness, "your species is young and inexperienced. You do not understand what you face. Surrender now and I will allow you to join our civilization. You will be given useful work and proper guidance." Marcus looked around his bridge. His crew was working calmly, preparing for battle with the efficiency that came from months of training. They were not perfect like the Zephyrians. They were not even particularly special. But they were his crew, and they were here because someone needed help. "That is very generous," Marcus said. "But we will have to decline." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of ship systems. Kethvar could not believe what he had heard. No species had ever refused the hegemony's offer to join peacefully. It was suicide. "You cannot be serious," Kethvar said. "You have one ship. I have 12. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are crude. This is not bravery, Captain. This is stupidity," Marcus smiled. "Maybe. But it is our stupidity and we are proud of it." The transmission ended. Around the Indomitable, 12 Zephyrian ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charged with energy that could tear apart space itself. Gravity sensors showed the local area beginning to distort as the Zephyrians prepared their most advanced attacks. "All stations, battle ready," Marcus announced. Throughout the ship, his crew prepared for what everyone knew would be the shortest battle in human history. The Zephyrians attacked with clockwork precision. 12 ships moving as one mind, firing in perfect coordination. Energy beams that could melt mountains. Gravity weapons that could crush a ship like an empty can. Space-time distortion fields that would tear the Indomitable apart at the atomic level. For the first 30 seconds, it looked like the battle would end exactly as everyone expected. Then the Indomitable did something impossible. As the Zephyrian weapons hit her, she began to flicker. One moment she was there, solid and real. The next moment she was translucent like a ghost ship. The energy beams passed right through her. The gravity weapons found nothing to grab. The distortion fields twisted empty space. "What is happening?" Kethvar demanded of his tactical officer. "Sir, the human ship appears to be phasing in and out of normal space. Our weapons cannot lock onto a target that exists only part of the time." Kethvar had never seen technology like this. Other species had tried to develop phasing technology, but it required perfect timing and precise control. The human ship seemed to be doing it randomly, flickering in and out of reality with no pattern that Zephyrian computers could predict. The Indomitable fired back. Her weapons were crude by galactic standards. Just chunks of metal accelerated to enormous speed. But when those chunks of metal hit Zephyrian ships at nearly the speed of light, they hit with the force of nuclear bombs. The first Zephyrian cruiser to be hit simply exploded. One moment it was there, beautiful and perfect. The next moment it was expanding gas and crystal fragments. "Impossible," Kethvar breathed. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields, but they could because human weapons did not work the way galactic weapons worked. Instead of trying to overcome Zephyrian shields with more energy, they simply ignored the shields entirely. Kinetic weapons moving at relativistic speeds did not care about energy barriers. They went through shields the same way they went through everything else, by being too fast and too massive to stop." The battle continued, but it was not the battle anyone had expected. The Zephyrians fought with perfect coordination. But the humans fought with controlled chaos. Every time the Zephyrian ships adjusted their tactics, the Indomitable did something different. She would phase out of reality to avoid one attack, then suddenly appear somewhere else to launch her own. Her weapons fired at irregular intervals from unexpected angles. Her crew seemed to thrive on the confusion of battle. "Sir," the Indomitable's tactical officer called out. "3 enemy ships destroyed, 2 more heavily damaged. They are falling back to regroup." Marcus watched the surviving Zephyrian ships retreat to a safe distance. His own ship had taken damage. The hull was scorched in several places and 2 of his weapon systems were offline. But they were alive, and they had done something no one had thought possible. They had made the Zephyrians retreat. "Captain," his communication officer said, "we are receiving a transmission from multiple sources. It appears that several species in this system witnessed the battle." On the screen, faces from a dozen different species appeared. Marcus recognized some of them from the distress message. Survivors of the rebellion that the Zephyrians had crushed. They all looked shocked. "Human ship," one of them said in broken English. "You made them run away. How is this possible?" Marcus looked around his bridge. His crew was already working to repair the damage from the battle. Outside, the Zephyrian ships held position, but they were no longer advancing. For the first time in 300 years, someone had stood up to the hegemony and survived. "I guess we fight differently," Marcus said. It was true. Humans did fight differently. They did not fight with perfect coordination or superior technology. They fought with stubborn determination and the willingness to try things that other species said were impossible. They fought because sometimes the right thing to do was also the stupid thing to do. And sometimes, just sometimes, stupid worked better than perfect. In the distance, Admiral Kethvar stared at the human ship that had just destroyed a quarter of his force. For 300 years, the hegemony had been unopposed. Now, a single primitive vessel had challenged that dominance and lived to tell about it. This would require a different approach. This would require everything the hegemony had to offer. Admiral Kethvar stood in his private chambers aboard the Eternal Dominion, staring at the battle recordings for the 100th time. The data made no sense. A single primitive ship had destroyed 3 of his cruisers and damaged 2 more. This should have been impossible. "Analysis complete, Admiral," his science officer reported through their mental link. "The human vessel uses technology that should not work. Their phasing system operates on quantum uncertainty rather than precise calculation. Their weapons ignore energy shields by using pure kinetic force. Most disturbing of all, their crew psychology actually improves under combat stress." Kethvar touched the crystal formations on his forehead, a gesture that helped him think. For 3 centuries, the Zephyrians had won every battle through superior technology and perfect coordination. Every species in the galaxy fought in predictable ways, with better weapons, faster ships, or natural advantages. The humans fought with chaos. "What do our tactical computers recommend?" he asked. "They recommend retreat, sir. The human fighting style cannot be predicted or countered using standard methods." This was unacceptable. The hegemony had never retreated from a single ship. If word spread that humans had forced a Zephyrian withdrawal, other species might begin to believe resistance was possible. The peace of 3 centuries would shatter. "Contact Fleet Command," Kethvar decided. "Request immediate reinforcements. Full battle fleet, including the Eternal Dominion. If the humans want to see what we can really do, we will show them." Across the system, Captain Rodriguez was learning what it meant to be the center of galactic attention. His ship floated near a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out as a refugee station. Dozens of alien ships surrounded the Indomitable, their crews staring in wonder at the vessel that had made Zephyrians retreat. "Captain," his communication officer announced, "we have representatives from 12 different species requesting permission to come aboard. They want to talk about forming a new alliance against the hegemony." Marcus rubbed his tired eyes. It had been 18 hours since the battle, and his crew was still making repairs. The Indomitable was tough, but she was not invincible. If Kethvar returned with more ships, they would need help. Let them come, he decided. But make it clear that we are not here to start a war. We are here because someone asked for help. The refugee station's main conference room had been designed for meetings between different species. The ceiling was high enough for tall beings, the gravity was adjustable, and the air mixture could be changed to accommodate different biologies. Marcus felt small sitting at the table surrounded by aliens, but he tried not to let it show. "Captain Rodriguez," said Commander Yithra, who had somehow survived the destruction of her ship. "You have done something we thought impossible. You made the Zephyrians afraid." "I do not think they are afraid," Marcus replied. "I think they are confused. There is a difference. A large insectoid being clicked its mandibles. Our species, the Veltar, have fought the hegemony for 50 years. We know their tactics, their weaknesses, but we have never seen them retreat from a single ship." "Your ship phases in and out of reality," added a reptilian creature. "Our scientists say this technology should tear your vessel apart. How do you control it?" Marcus smiled. "We do not control it. That is the point. We built a ship that does things other species say are impossible, and we learned to fight with it instead of against it." The aliens looked at each other with confusion. Every species they knew tried to control their technology perfectly. The idea of deliberately building unpredictable systems seemed insane. "You fight with chaos," Commander Yithra said slowly. "This is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Maybe that is why civilized species keep losing to the Zephyrians," Marcus suggested. Before anyone could respond, alarms began ringing throughout the station. On the main screen, new contacts appeared, dozens of them dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. The Eternal Dominion led them, 15 kilometers of crystalline death followed by a fleet that could destroy entire planets. "Kethvar has returned," Commander Yithra whispered. "He brought everything." Marcus stood up and looked at the massive fleet on the screen. The Eternal Dominion alone was 20 times larger than his ship. The escort vessels numbered in the hundreds. This was not a battle fleet. This was an extinction event. "All species representatives," he announced. "I suggest you evacuate your people to the far side of the system. This is about to become very dangerous." "What about your ship?" asked the Veltar representative. "You cannot fight that entire fleet alone." Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking about his crew, his ship, and the impossible mission that had brought them here. We did not come this far to run away now. The conference broke up quickly as alien ships began evacuating the asteroid station. Within hours, the refugee fleet was moving toward the outer system, leaving only the Indomitable floating alone in space. On her bridge, Captain Rodriguez watched the Zephyrian fleet approach. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "I count over 300 enemy vessels. The flagship alone has enough firepower to crack a moon." "What about our surprise packages?" Marcus asked. "All boarding shuttles are loaded and ready. The crews know it is a one-way trip." Marcus nodded. The Indomitable carried something no other ship in the galaxy had: human marines trained for zero-gravity combat. While other species relied on superior technology and long-range weapons, humans had decided to get up close and personal. The Zephyrian fleet approached in perfect formation. Kethvar had learned from the first battle. Instead of sending a small force, he brought overwhelming numbers. Instead of trying to predict human tactics, he would simply destroy everything in the area and be done with it. "Human vessel," Kethvar's voice came over the communication system. "You are outnumbered 300 to 1. Your allies have abandoned you. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated with honor." Marcus activated the general communication system so his entire crew could hear his response. "Admiral Kethvar, I appreciate the offer, but we have a saying on Earth. If you are going to do something stupid, do it with style." The battle began with the force of 100 suns. The entire Zephyrian fleet opened fire at once, filling space with enough energy to boil oceans. Reality twisted and bent as gravity weapons tried to crush the human ship. Time itself seemed to slow as chrono-distortion fields activated. The Indomitable disappeared. For a moment, Kethvar thought they had vaporized the human vessel completely. Then his sensors detected something impossible. The human ship had not been destroyed. It had phased completely out of normal space, existing only as quantum possibilities. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessel is everywhere and nowhere. Our sensors cannot lock onto something that exists in probability rather than reality." Then the Indomitable reappeared, not where anyone expected, but inside the Zephyrian formation. She materialized next to a heavy cruiser and fired her kinetic weapons at point-blank range. The Zephyrian ship exploded like a crystal glass hit by a hammer, but the human ship was already gone again, phasing out of reality before the other vessels could respond. She appeared next to another target, destroyed it, and vanished again. The Zephyrians found themselves fighting an enemy that could be anywhere, anytime, without warning. "This is not warfare," Kethvar said in shock. "This is madness." "Sir," his communication officer announced, "we are detecting small craft launching from the human vessel. They appear to be boarding shuttles?" Kethvar could not believe what he was hearing. The humans were actually trying to board Zephyrian ships in the middle of the battle. It was suicide. Zephyrian vessels were designed to prevent boarding actions. Their hulls were reinforced, their corridors were filled with deadly traps, and their crews were armed with weapons that could disintegrate attackers. The first human boarding team hit the cruiser Crystal Harmony like a meteorite. They did not try to dock politely or cut through the hull carefully. They simply crashed their shuttle through the ship's side and began fighting their way toward the bridge. The Zephyrian crew, who had never faced boarding actions before, found themselves fighting humans in their own corridors. It was not a fair fight. The humans wore armor that made them look like mechanical monsters. They carried weapons that fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams. Most shocking of all, they seemed to enjoy the chaos of close combat. While Zephyrian crews tried to coordinate through their mental links, human marines simply charged forward, shooting everything that moved and laughing as they did it. "Sir," Kethvar's tactical officer reported in growing panic, "we have 17 ships reporting boarding actions. The humans are inside our vessels fighting in the corridors. Some of our crews are requesting permission to abandon ship." Kethvar stared at the battle display. The Indomitable continued to phase in and out of reality, appearing just long enough to destroy another ship before vanishing again. Human boarding parties had turned what should have been a simple fleet engagement into a chaotic brawl. His perfect formations were breaking apart as ship captains tried to avoid the unpredictable human vessel, while dealing with invaders in their own corridors. The battle had been raging for 6 hours when Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would change galactic history. The Indomitable had destroyed 40 Zephyrian ships and damaged dozens more, but the human vessel was running out of ammunition and power. Her phasing system was overheating, and half her crew was away on boarding missions they might never return from. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the Eternal Dominion is moving to attack position. She is charging her primary weapons." Marcus looked at the massive flagship on his screen, 15 kilometers of crystal death, bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. Even if the Indomitable phased out of reality completely, the Eternal Dominion's weapons were powerful enough to damage things that did not fully exist. "How long until our boarding shuttles return?" he asked. 20 minutes, sir, but the flagship will be in firing position in 5. Marcus made his choice. "Signal all boarding parties to continue their missions. Plot an intercept course for the Eternal Dominion." His bridge crew stared at him. "Sir," his navigation officer said carefully, "an intercept course would put us on a collision trajectory." "I know," Marcus said calmly, "but we are not going to crash into her. We are going to crash through her." The Indomitable accelerated toward the Zephyrian flagship, her battered hull glowing with the strain of maximum speed. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kethvar watched the human ship approach with something like admiration. The primitive vessel was about to die in a glorious but pointless gesture. "All weapons target the human ship," he commanded. "Fire when ready." The Eternal Dominion's primary weapons charged with enough power to crack moons. Energy that could tear apart space itself focused on the approaching human vessel. At this range, even phasing technology could not save the Indomitable. The weapons fired. Space itself burned with unleashed power. The Indomitable vanished completely, not into partial phasing, but into pure quantum uncertainty. For a split second, she existed everywhere and nowhere at once, spread across all possible realities. The Zephyrian weapons hit empty space. Then the human ship rematerialized, not beside the Eternal Dominion, but inside her. The Indomitable had phased through the flagship's hull and emerged in the massive hangar bay. Zephyrian fighters and shuttles exploded as the human battleship materialized among them. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the crystal ship as atmosphere vented into space. "Impossible," Kethvar breathed. "They are inside our ship." The Indomitable's airlocks opened and human marines poured out into the Zephyrian vessel. They had trained for this moment. Boarding actions in zero gravity, fighting in corridors designed for beings twice their size. The Zephyrian crew, who had never faced enemies inside their own ship, fell back in confusion. Captain Rodriguez led the assault personally. He had left his bridge to Lieutenant Commander Chen, a young officer who would have to keep the Indomitable operational while her captain was away. Marcus himself wore battle armor and carried weapons designed for close combat. He was not the biggest or strongest human on his ship, but he was their leader, and leaders led from the front. The fight through the Eternal Dominion was unlike anything in galactic military history. Zephyrian defenders tried to use their perfect coordination and superior technology, but human tactics turned every advantage against them. When the Zephyrians set up perfect defensive positions, human marines simply blew holes through the walls and attacked from unexpected directions. When Zephyrian weapons fired precisely aimed energy beams, human soldiers responded with explosives that did not care about accuracy. "Sir," a Zephyrian officer reported to Kethvar through their mental link, "the humans have taken decks 12 through 15. They are fighting toward the bridge. How many of them are there?" Kethvar demanded. "Perhaps 50 Marines, sir. But they fight like—" The officer paused, searching for words. "Like they are not afraid to die." This was something the Zephyrians could not understand. Their species valued perfection and preservation above all else. They fought to win, not to die gloriously. The idea of warriors who became more dangerous when facing certain death was completely alien to their thinking. The battle continued through the crystal corridors of the flagship. Human Marines, outnumbered 10 to 1, advanced steadily toward the bridge. They left behind damaged systems, sealed bulkheads, and very confused Zephyrian defenders. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. "This is Sergeant Martinez," came a voice over Marcus's communication system. "We have secured the main computer core. The Zephyrians have some interesting files here, sir. Looks like they keep detailed records of every species they have conquered." "Copy that, Sergeant. Hold position and download everything you can." Marcus and his assault team reached the final corridor leading to the bridge. Ahead of them, the last line of Zephyrian defenders waited behind energy barriers that could stop tank rounds. The crystal beings held weapons that fired coherent energy beams capable of cutting through starship armor. "Captain," one of his Marines said, "those barriers are military grade. Our weapons will not penetrate them." Marcus looked at the defensive position and smiled. "Corporal, do you still have those mining charges we picked up on Asteroid Station?" "Yes, sir. But those are for blasting rock, not fighting battles. Same principle applies. Sometimes you need to go through obstacles instead of around them." The explosion that followed was not elegant or precise. It was loud, destructive, and completely effective. The Zephyrian energy barriers overloaded and failed. The walls cracked. The ceiling partially collapsed. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power systems shut down to prevent further damage. Through the smoke and debris, human Marines advanced on the bridge of the most powerful ship in Zephyrian space. The defenders who remained were stunned, deafened, and completely unprepared for enemies who solved problems with controlled explosions. Admiral Kethvar stood in the center of his ruined bridge, his crystal armor cracked, his perfect ship burning around him. Before him stood Captain Rodriguez, a primitive human in battered armor, pointing a crude projectile weapon at the leader of the Zephyrian hegemony. "Admiral," Marcus said politely, "I believe we need to talk." Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers were captured or unconscious. His ship was crippled. Outside, the battle continued. But without the flagship's coordination, the Zephyrian fleet was losing its perfect unity. "You have won," Kethvar said with something that might have been respect. "What do you want?" Marcus lowered his weapon slightly. "I want you to leave this sector and never come back. I want you to free the species you have enslaved. I want you to understand that the galaxy is big enough for everyone to be free. And if I refuse?" Marcus gestured toward the ruined bridge. "Then we will have this conversation on every Zephyrian ship, on every Zephyrian world, until you change your mind or there are no more Zephyrians left to argue with." For the first time in his long life, Kethvar faced a concept that did not exist in Zephyrian philosophy. Warriors who fought not for conquest or survival, but for the freedom of others. The humans could have demanded tribute, territory, or submission. Instead, they asked for nothing except that others be allowed to live in peace. "You would do this?" Kethvar asked. "You would fight the entire hegemony just to free species you do not even know?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "That is what we do." The silence that followed was broken by reports from around the system. Human boarding parties were broadcasting from captured Zephyrian ships. The refugee fleets were returning, bringing with them species that had hidden in fear for centuries. Most important of all, subspace communications were carrying news of the battle to every corner of the galaxy. "Sir," Marcus's communication officer reported from the Indomitable, "we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. It appears that news of our victory is spreading. Several species are asking if we can help them fight their own occupiers." Kethavar heard this and understood what it meant. The hegemony had maintained control through the belief that resistance was impossible. Now a single human ship had proven that even the most powerful fleet could be defeated. The peace of 3 centuries was already beginning to crumble. "If I order our withdrawal from this sector," he said slowly, "will you leave us in peace?" Marcus considered this. "If you free the people you have enslaved and promise to leave them alone, yes. We did not come here to destroy the Zephyrians. We came here because someone asked for help." It was the most incredible thing Kethavar had ever heard. The humans had won a victory that would echo across the galaxy, and they were willing to walk away from it if their enemies agreed to do the right thing. "I will need time to consult with the Hegemony Council," he said finally. "You have 24 hours, Marcus replied. "After that, we start visiting more of your ships." The negotiation that followed was unlike any in galactic history. Instead of demanding conquest or tribute, the humans asked only that the Zephyrians leave peaceful species alone. Instead of claiming territory, they requested that enslaved populations be freed. Instead of establishing their own empire, they offered to simply go home if the Zephyrians agreed to stop bothering others. 24 hours later, Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion and broadcast a message that would change everything.